Your ACL graft isn't biologically healed at 6 months, and this paper tells us more. Hello and welcome to Sunday Paper Roundup, where I read the papers so you don't have to. This week's paper is from the latest edition of the Orthopaedic Journal of Sports Medicine, and it's right in the centre of what's happening in ACL surgery right now. Quads tendon ACL has exploded across North America and Europe, and my own practice has gone from 0 to 20% of my ACL grafts over the last 5 years, and I'm very happy with it. So why does this paper matter? Well, we talk about return to sport, strength tests, hop tests, confidence, all important, but underneath all of that is biology. The graft has to remodel and mature. That process is called ligamentization, and this paper tries to map what ACL graft maturation looks like on MRI in the first year for quad tendons. So what did they do? They followed 19 athletes having primary all-inside quads tendon ACL reconstruction by a single surgeon. They did MRI scans before surgery and at 3, 6 and 12 months after, measuring something called the signal intensity ratio. Basically, the ACL graft signal normalized to the posterior cruciate ligament signal. Then they looked at the graft as a whole graft and split it into smaller segments from top to bottom to see if different parts mature differently. What did they find? Well, here's the headline. At 3 and 6 months, the graft signal was higher than the contralateral native ACL, consistent with active remodeling, and the most pronounced differences were proximally near the femoral side, which lagged behind earlier on and is the last to mature, but by 12 months it looked most like a native ACL. They also had outliers. A few patients still had a very high graft signal at 12 months, and the authors raised the possibility that those patients may represent slower ligamentization and potentially a higher risk, but that's not proven here. Does this prove that quads tendon is better than hamstring or patellar tendon? No, this isn't a graft versus graft study, but the authors state the timeline is largely consistent with published maturation patterns for hamstring and patellar tendon grafts. They also cite prior studies showing a very similar pattern across those graft types, early increased signal, then trending towards the native ACL signal by 12 months. So what are the clinical implications? 1, this supports what many of us already believe. 3 to 6 months is still biologically active graft remodeling, so time alone is a bad clearance tool. 2, the proximal graft, the top end appears to lag, and the author suggests this might be the area more susceptible to injury if you return too early to high-risk sport. 3, this does not mean we should start clearing athletes based on MRI signal alone. The authors explicitly say we need this to be linked to PROMs, laxity, graft failure and revision before it can inform return to play decision making. We need studies linking this to outcomes and re-tear risk before it can be used to predict return to sport. But what about the weaknesses and limitations? This is where we need to be honest. It was a really small study, only 19 patients, and the population were predominantly female, and so you can't automatically apply this to adult males, older athletes or different graft techniques. MRI signal is a proxy, not a direct measure of graft strength that had no histology or structural validation. Signal intensity values are scanner and sequence dependent, so raw numbers don't transfer cleanly across centres. And crucially, there is no direct outcome correlation, which is exactly why we can't make strong predictions from this alone. As always, we end the Sunday Paper Roundup with a verdict. Should you ignore it, be aware of it, consider it, or go right ahead and change your practice? Well, my verdict, be aware of it and keep it in mind when you see patients, because it helps frame the biology, but it makes limited conclusions and limited predictions. Follow along for next Sunday's paper. I'll keep breaking down the evidence as it lands.